I'm Dr. Randy Neal, and in this video we're going to discuss, how to approach a provider, or, when someone's having difficulty with sleep, is it at a point where you need to see a prescriber or some type of provider who's going to maybe prescribe something to assist in that area. But as far as my take on it, is when someone comes in and says, look, I need some help with sleep. And the first thing that we do when someone comes in, whether it's in the hospital, inpatient setting, is to ask them how their sleep is, because obviously if you're not getting that any type of sleep, or even good sleep, it can really throw off everything. It can throw off the mood and really make matters so much worse. So the first thing that I usually do is just kind of hit them pretty hard with something that's going to actually give them a good night's rest. And then when you reassess them in the morning, a lot of times people are just flat out better once they get that rest, because their mind just can't shut down sometimes. But if you're in the outpatient setting and you're thinking about approaching your provider, I would kind of have some realistic expectations of what do you want to accomplish with this. To come in there and say I want 8 hours of complete sleep seems that would probably be a bit much. But how I would approach it is to, obviously, when you get to that point, you've probably already been down the road of the whole sleep hygiene with the cool room and it's all dark. You're there to talk about medication options. So the first thing that I would say is, I would ask somebody is to make sure, are you using these over-the-counter medications? Because I'm not really a big fan of those. Even if you're studying for exams, you need to be aware of those, the Tylenol PMs or the ZzzQuils or any of those over-the-counter medications, because really, if you look at the ingredient, it's pretty much all the same. It's that diphenhydramine, which is basically Benadryl. And Benadryl's, they call it anticholinergic. It's that acetylcholine piece. And especially if you're studying, you always think, oh, I want a good night's sleep, I'm going to take this. But it's actually removing your acetylcholine from actually doing its job. And that can also impair memory. So it kind of works against really what you're trying to accomplish. But long-term use of those medications, and we see this time and time again, and you can Google this with diphenhydramine and memory loss, dementia. It can actually make this perhaps even kind of accelerated. That's my opinion. I have to see what the research says on that, but definitely it's a fact that it can impair that memory piece, and there's a lot of concern out there for that. So number one is stay away from the over-the-counter medications if you can. They're just not a long-term solution. When you start looking about things to take, obviously step number one, you need to look at melatonin. That would be my first recommendation before even coming to see a prescriber, is to say, melatonin is something that we naturally make in our own body. It kind of regulates the sleep cycle and circadian rhythm. So it's something that you would try. You would do it as the sun sets to kind of coincide with how you would naturally make it. And then how much, because in the store it comes in like 3, 5, 10, and so on. And there's not a lot of regulation on those type of supplements. And I think there was even a study done that said, when they looked at all the different tablets, there was a variation in the amounts in each one, despite what was said on the outside of the bottle. But what I'd recommend, perhaps if you're going down that road, at least what I do for patients that come to see me, is you're gonna, you would try the melatonin first at sunset, and usually I always have people start at the 3 milligram level. But again, that's because there's no data to support that an increased dose would actually do you any more benefit at this point. Now, when it comes to the medication piece, I would really caution, expectations as far as taking medications, because, if you're getting 6 hours sleep, I would say that's pretty much what you could expect to get with any type of medicated sleep. But the safer ones that are out there, if I was to kind of rank them, is to ask someone about the trazodone. And trazodone is just an SSRI, one of those depression medications when you use it at the high doses. But what they notice is that when you use that medication at the low dose, it actually made people tired. And the beauty of that one is that trazodone typically doesn't interact with a lot of other medications. So in that aspect, it's relatively safe. And usually, we do that a lot of times on the inpatient unit, but also prescribe it on the outpatient unit. But what you got to understand too is, if you use this medication or some of the other ones, if you use it on a consistent basis, that it actually has a lessening effect. So it's so important, and I can't stress this enough, it's so important that when you go down this road is to use these intermittently. You don't use them every day, because eventually what they find is that people who took the medication for sleep and the one who took a placebo or a sugar pill, after a certain time they kind of crossed to where there's really no difference. So I'd say to get the maximum benefit for these long term is you really have to use these kind of sparingly. Some other ones, like if you were, some people who have depression and such, sometimes, you like to add a little benefit. Not only do they get treated for the depression, but you want something else, kind of a buy-in per se, because that allows them to understand that not only do I take this for my mood, but to them it might be more of a sleep agent. And that's why sometimes I like Remeron or mirtazapine for some people, because at the lower doses, that one ranges from like 7.5 all the way up to 45 milligrams, is at the lower doses it can actually have an impact on sleep as well. And so it's kind of like knocking two birds out with one stone. So those are the safest options. I would just progress myself up to the sleep hygiene, to the melatonin, and then if you come see a provider, I think having that discussion about currently what your health status is, and then maybe looking at those two medications, because they're relatively safe as compared to the other ones, and then you start getting into the whole Ambiens of the world, and you're just asking for kind of there's a whole can of worms on that one that you really, for myself, I just don't like to kind of cross. The one thing I'd say I'd recommend for sleep, in addition to the medications, is to try when you're laying there and your mind's racing, because that's usually what it is. People just can't shut it off. Is to lay there and in the darkness and just be thankful for everything around you. I know it sounds kind of cliche and such, but if you lay there, you be still, and if you can't think of things to be thankful for, you're thankful for your pillow. You're thankful for the air that you breathe, and you just keep going around the room or around how you're feeling, and just keep being grateful. Be grateful for the health of your family members. And eventually, if you keep doing this, you're going to exhaust yourself. But more importantly, you're just changing that mindset, that frame of mind, from perhaps a negative state to where you're just worrying about money, finances, job, relationship, worrying about all those, and you've changed it to a sense of gratitude. And for me personally, when I start doing that, it can actually make an impact, because it obviously has for me. So anyways, that's kind of my take when it comes to the sleep, as far as my philosophy and how I would approach it if someone were to ask me, how could they improve in that area. So hope you liked the video.